The mystery of the Winston Hall Conservatory. The train slowly reduced its speed, pushing its way through the gray morning fog of Westshire. Through the misty carriage window, the small station came into view, neat, quiet, and illuminated by a single lamp that seemed to shine out of a sense of duty rather than necessity. Elizabeth Randall rose from her seat, adjusting the collar of her coat. Her face remained calm, but a trace of anticipation shimmered in her eyes. Rarely did an invitation to investigate arrive in such a dramatic form. The letter sent by Lady Constance Winston looked as though it had been written in haste. The words carried a cold, breathless fear. Please come at once. Something dreadful has happened. I am certain it was no accident. I beg you to help me before it is too late. Such words are seldom empty. At the platform, Elizabeth was met by an elderly man with pale, faded eyes, Butler Graves. Welcome to Winston Hall, Miss Randall, he said dryly. The carriage awaits. They drove along a narrow road for nearly 20 minutes. Trees formed a natural tunnel overhead, through which the dull autumn light filtered down. Finally, the fog thinned, revealing Winston Hall, a grand Victorian Gothic manor with tall towers, narrow windows, stone arches, and heavy oak doors. Remarkable, Elizabeth said, like something pulled from an old legend. Our house has seen many stories, madam, Graves replied, and I fear not all of them pleasant. Lady Constance awaited her in the small drawing room. A woman in her mid-60s, elegant, graceful, with the bearing of a former ballerina. Yet her face carried an exhaustion and sadness no jewels or makeup could conceal. Thank you for coming, dear Miss Randall, she said, her voice trembling. I am desperate. Tell me everything from the beginning, Lady Constance. My nephew, Harold Winston. He died 2 nights ago. The police insist it was an accident. He often visited the conservatory. It's terribly humid there, easy to slip. But I know he was murdered. Elizabeth lifted her gaze. What makes you believe so? Lady Constance nervously tightened her fingers around the pendant on her neck. Harold found something in my late husband's papers. Something he said concerned our family's inheritance. He told me it was urgent, and that I deserved to know the truth. We agreed he would tell me everything that evening, but he never arrived. She covered her face with her hands. The police refused to reopen the case. Please, help me. I will examine everything I can, Elizabeth said softly. We shall start with the conservatory. A heavy silence settled over the room. The conservatory of Winston Hall was vast, nearly the size of a ballroom, with high glass walls and curved iron beams. The evening light filtered through exotic leaves, creating strange, wavering shadows. Inside, the air smelled of damp soil, flowers, and something else. Sharp, oily, barely noticeable. His body was found here? Elizabeth asked Graves. Yes, madam. Near the far wall, by the orchid collection. Elizabeth approached the indicated spot. A faint dark stain remained on the tiles. But more importantly, one of the orchid shells had been moved. Slightly, just a couple of centimeters, but enough for an attentive eye to notice. And at the base of the shelf, an elongated scratch in the wood, as though pushed violently. Someone either fell against it or shoved it, she murmured. Behind the shelf, the soil was soft. Elizabeth knelt and parted the plants to reveal a fresh boot print. Clear, deep, recently made. The print led to the back door. The door was ajar, though according to Graves it was always locked at night. Elizabeth touched the handle. Her fingers became sticky. The smell? Familiar, but she couldn't yet place it. She ran her gaze along the metal frame and noticed a faint golden dust, very fine, almost invisible. Too many oddities for an accident. The inhabitants of Winston Hall. The next morning, Elizabeth began speaking with the household. In old estates, a murder never stands alone. It always tugs at a nest of emotions, secrets, and motives. 1. Graves, the butler. Young Harold was volatile, he said, but that night he seemed troubled. Did you see him before his death? Yes. Around 9. He mentioned he had something important to tell Lady Constance, something he found in the old master's papers. And after that, I saw no more of him. He spoke with confidence, but his eyes flickered, betraying a hidden truth. Fear, loyalty, something else. 2. Martha Selling, the companion. A timid woman in her 40s, with gentle features and a nervous smile. Harold, he could be kind, she said softly, but lately he was easily angered. He argued with Lady Constance often. Over money? Martha flinched. Perhaps, but I prefer not to interfere. She avoided eye contact, her fingers twisting her handkerchief. She was frightened, not of Elizabeth, but of something else. 3. Julian Hart, the gardener. A gaunt man with rough manners and sharp eyes. He greeted her coldly. "I'm sorry about Harold," he muttered while cleaning tools, "but I saw nothing unusual. You were in the conservatory that evening?" "Yes, but left before 10. A lie. Elizabeth had noticed the same oily substance from the door handle, smeared on his sleeve. "You know the plant called specimen 43? She asked suddenly. Hart stiffened. His face hardened. "No, never heard of it." But his eyes told another story. Papers that should never be seen. That evening, Lady Constance led Elizabeth into her late husband's study. A massive oak desk, portraits of expeditions, maps, and shelves filled with botanical books. Boxes of preserved plant specimens lined the walls. Harold said he found a folder, but I don't know which, Lady Constance whispered. Elizabeth sorted through the papers. Eventually, she discovered a thin folder hidden between large books. No title, no date. Inside were several Latin documents and photos of peculiar plants. One sheet bore a shiny oil-like smudge, almost like latex residue. On the back of one photograph were the words, "Specimen 43, extremely toxic, gloves required, severe neurotoxic effect, causes dizziness, loss of coordination." Elizabeth's breath caught. Everything aligned. The oily trace on the door, the scent in the conservatory, the sudden fall. Harold had been poisoned. Threads of the web. Elizabeth spent the night analyzing motives. Lady Constance. Possible motive? Yes, but she seemed genuinely devastated. Martha. If Harold intended to destroy a will, she had reason to fear him. But Martha appeared too fragile for premeditated murder. Graves. Old, loyal, secretive. But motive? Unclear. Hart. Access to rare plants. Lies. Toxic residue on his clothing. He was the obvious suspect. Too obvious. Elizabeth needed proof. A test of truth. In the early morning, she approached Julian Hart as he worked near the West Wing. "Julian," she said calmly, "I need your opinion on a plant." She handed him the photo of specimen 43. Hart froze. His jaw clenched. "No idea what that is." "Curious," she replied. "This plant is in your late master's collection, and its oil matches the residue on the door and on your sleeve." His eyes darted toward the exit. "What did you do to Harold?" she asked quietly. Hart inhaled sharply, as though a long-kept secret pressed on his ribs. "He wanted to destroy the catalog," he said hoarsely. "Mr. Winston's whole life's work gone, sold to criminals. I only wanted to stop him." "You poisoned him?" "No," Hart shouted. "I only smeared a little oil on the handle. It causes weakness, nothing more. He was supposed to rethink his plans, not die. You tried to cover it up." Hart lowered his head. "I panicked. The web tightens." Yet something was wrong. Hart was guilty, but not of murder. The dose he used was insufficient. Someone added pure toxin. Someone with knowledge of her investigation. Someone she had not suspected enough. Graves. Martha. Lady Constance. The final conversation. Elizabeth returned to Lady Constance. The woman sat by the window, staring at the twisted branches outside. "You look troubled, Miss Randall," she said quietly. "I discovered something," Elizabeth replied gently. Harold was not only weakened, he was killed using pure specimen 43. Lady Constance's eyes shimmered with tears. "I knew this would end horribly," she whispered. "But not like this. You're hiding something." The woman covered her face. "Harold found my husband's real will. The true will." Elizabeth stilled. "And who was the heir?" "Martha," Lady Constance said softly. "She was the only one my husband trusted. Harold wanted to destroy the will, so he could inherit everything." Elizabeth remembered Martha's trembling hands. "Where is the will now?" Lady Constance handed her the document. "Genuine, legally binding. Harold feared it would ruin him," she said. They argued constantly. Elizabeth knew it was time to confront Martha. Martha was in her small room, sewing. She dropped the scarf when Elizabeth entered. "You wish to speak with me?" "Yes." "About the will." Martha turned pale. "Lady Constance told you?" "I wanted to confess, but I was afraid." "Did you follow Harold into the conservatory?" "Yes," she whispered. "I wanted to beg him not to burn it. But when I entered, he was already lying there, motionless. I thought he was dead. I ran." She burst into tears. "I swear, I never touched any poisonous plants. I can barely handle garden flowers." Elizabeth believed her. Martha was terrified, but innocent, which left only one person. The man who knew the house better than anyone, who saw the body first, who could manipulate the plants. Graves. Elizabeth found Graves in the hall, carrying a tea tray. "We must talk," she said firmly. They entered the deserted dining room. "Miss Randall," he said calmly, "you are going to accuse me, aren't you?" Elizabeth met his gaze. "You added pure specimen 43 to Hart's weak mixture. That is why Harold died instantly. Hart used only a trace, never enough to kill." A faint, sorrowful smile crossed the old man's face. "You are remarkably perceptive." "Yes, I did it." "Why?" Graves sighed. "I served this family for 56 years. I watched Harold grow into a cruel, selfish man. He threatened Lady Constance, threatened to ruin everything Mr. Winston built. The will, he wanted it destroyed. He would have left Lady Constance penniless." He looked at his hands, thin, wrinkled. "Mr. Winston asked me to protect her. I merely fulfilled that duty. You killed Harold. I spared the family greater suffering." He looked up. "And you cannot prove anything." Martha will not speak. "Lady Constance trusts me. And Hart, who would believe him?" Elizabeth held his gaze. He did not flinch. The choice was now hers. She could expose him, wreck Lady Constance's fragile heart, destroy the household, or she could let the matter rest. Harold had been vicious. His death prevented misery for many. Hart was innocent. Martha was safe. Lady Constance was protected. And Graves, his conscience would judge him more severely than any court. Elizabeth finally said, "Mr. Graves, I am leaving tomorrow morning." The butler bowed deeply. "Thank you, Miss Randall." The train pulled away in the quiet morning. Elizabeth watched as Winston Hall faded behind the trees. The truth was known. Justice, delivered in its own imperfect way. She opened her notebook and wrote, "Not every crime must be exposed. Some must simply be understood." Yet a thought echoed within her. Old houses never lose their shadows. They only fall silent until the next disturbance wakes them. She closed the notebook and prepared for the next case. Thank you for listening to this story. Please like and comment this video. Adios.